host, John Light, and CEO and President of Sabretooth Recruiting. And I've got somebody that has a lot of respect from my end towards you, is Jim Vogt. Jim, thanks so much for joining us today.
Oh, great to be here. Thank you, John.
No, happy to have you, Jim. And one of the reasons I'm excited about having you on is you've got, I don't know how to put it. It's like you're one of the, I guess the term is one of the OGs in Silicon Valley. You know, you were there in the 80s. You came up through software engineering before moving into more executive roles, which I find fascinating because I know that you've got history in all things tech. Be it from the startup level all the way through larger P&L responsibility at an executive level. So I'm hoping that you could get us started by kind of giving an overview of that and what brought you to where you are today.
Sure. Well, unlike my upbringing, I went to 3 different high schools across the country, so I traveled quite a bit, but my whole career has been right here in the Silicon Valley in the Bay Area. So I graduated with a double E, and then got my MBA right here at Santa Clara University. So I designed for about 5 years, and then I got into business, and specifically into product line and product management. So very deep product sense and how to mate the product to the go-to-market. Started with a company called Synoptics that was 178 million when I joined, just public, and we grew to over $4 billion in about 6 years. So to be around that kind of growth and have to make decisions in that environment and be able to scale with the growth very quickly and adapt and essentially still produce results. That was a great place to really cut my teeth and get my experience. Synoptics became Bay. Bay got swallowed up by Nortel. I ended up running a $1 billion division, full P&L, big job. So my product experience I just garnered more and more of the P&L, right? So that's where I got the bulk of my experience, and being able to be technical and map product to market has really helped me. So I went ahead after that and went out into the startup world, as we say, the get-rich-quick world. No, a lot of work. Raised about $140 million in capital across a series of companies. Notably, Ingrian was one, that was my first one, and we got bought by SafeNet. Went to Trapeze, built a $0 to $100 million business, sold that as well to Belden at the time. Then also, I went out and did a startup within a public company, which was Blue Coat. I helped them build their cloud business, which they really needed to pivot to really save the company and the business, and was a big part of why they got swallowed up or merged with Symantec and eventually bought by Broadcom. And back in those days, which is about 2010, we didn't have Amazon Web Services and Azure and Google Cloud. We had to rack and stack and build our own points of presence and build the business. So really the sum of my career is that I've been able to adapt to virtualization. So a lot of the infrastructure I sold back in the 90s became cloud-based, became provisioned, infrastructure as a service, security as a service, all the different service businesses. And just after the pandemic, I started to consult, and I've helped a series of companies, and essentially they've crossed AI, ML, most recently robotics, a lot of security, some fintech. There was one company that we built a cloud-based service that was linked to a mobile app, which had a lot of moving parts. So a lot of different experience, and my value is not just the product piece, but being able to map the product to the right go-to-market approach. And I've seen a bunch of them, right? I've been on the voice side, I've been on the data side, very well versed in multiple markets, and that's where I can really help companies.
You know, it's funny because I just did I was part of a virtual conference yesterday that was recorded not just for the people who were attending, but also for posterity, right? Kind of this repository of subject matter experts on various topics to help builders scale quickly. And it was an interesting proposition to me because when you look around the landscape in the marketplace, we hear a lot about scale, because you're going to get return on investment as an investor. If you're going to build something like you said, the get-rich-quick scheme of startups, which everybody knows, Doesn't really work out that way
Yeah, it
most of the
doesn't
time.
always work out that way, right?
But you've got this idea that scaling is everything, and I think there's some resonance to that with people from the perspective of well, how do we grow? I mean, how do we really go about it? It's not like we're genetically programmed to grow a business the way our bodies just automatically grow based on whatever information's in our genes, right? So I'm curious to hear a little bit about, in that context, Jim, what's the biggest problem you think that your experience has bring forward with your experience that you solve today?
Yeah, so it's kind of a funny story because when I before I got involved with startups, the VCs would tell me you got to run a full P&L, right? So here I ran $1 billion P&L at Nortel, and now I'm a big company guy and I can't do startups, right? So the trick is knowing everything that I've known and experienced, right? And most of it's been not from my intellect, but from my experience. I've seen a lot of different things. You got to be able to match the right scale and process to the company at the right
Right.
stage. So too many people try to really just roar out there, cover the market, build a vast go-to-market. The trick is the sequencing. So where are you going to get first traction and really show the product market fit? And then how do you expand from there and how do you continue to scale the business? And that sequence is different for every company. There's no recipe. It's really just experience and matching the right processes and the right go-to-market to the business, right? The other key thing, and people underestimate this, but the team is so key.
Oh yeah. Oh
Having
yeah.
the right team in place is essential and has been probably the biggest part of my success has been able to build really good teams. And what I learned early on is you don't necessarily just go to your known sources, the people you
Right.
trust. There's a lot of great people I've worked with, but if they're not the right match to the business, you're not doing the company or that person any service, right? So I learned very early on that there are some people within my network that can help if they're right match, but you really have to go find the right person, the right team to build the business. And the trust is just so critical. The trust is so critical in that team. And we used to have something we called hallway dismantling, where you make a decision in a room and the guy gets out and says, I know we said yes in there, but I disagree with Jim. That's a cancer, right? And
Right.
so I've actually had to remove people because of that kind of problem, right? But the team is key. The sequencing of the go-to-market, those are the problems. How do you scale and sustain scale? How do you build a business from 0 to $100 million, right? That's not a recipe.
Well, that's a
That's
huge
a,
jump. I mean, that's a
yeah, you,
lot of territory, a big runway to go down. I mean, going from zero to 100 million. Crud, man, getting from zero to a million's an accomplishment.
well, it was funny because when you're forecasting from zero, it's really tough, right? And I had a really great board member, and we were trying to figure out our second year. As we were getting going, we were trying to figure out our second year forecast, and he said, I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4 for 4 quarters, right? And guess what? It was damn near 1, 2, 3, 4, right across the board. But there's no magic to it. You really just have to walk out on it, and you have to be able to adapt. And one of the big things that I'm a proponent of is a 2-year rolling plan. And when you're early, you're adjusting that thing monthly, and if not quarterly, but monthly in most cases, because you're learning. And as you're learning, you put the money and the resources where the heat is to drive that growth and that market fit. And then you're thinking out 2 years, well, okay, if it's 4 million this year, how does it get to 20 million, right? So you really got to walk out on it, and you have to have the right sequence of go to market. It's so critical, and it's different every time. The team's different, the process is different, businesses are different. So I wish I had a cookie cutter, right? But I don't. It's
Or at least
I
the
got
magic
all
wand.
kinds of cookie cutters, right? And I got to
Yeah.
pick the right one for the business, and that's where I can help. And I think the other thing that we talked about previously is there are a lot of young companies out there that have fantastic ideas, right? Fantastic market ideas and products, but simply haven't scaled a business before. So that's where I help and can help the team and bring that experience with
Would you
their
say
great ideas or breakout ideas and some structure of a company. You can build a sustainable business, basically.
would you say that is if there are people you wanted to hear this message or talk to about what you bring to the table in terms of solutions for big problems like that, would you say that's the prime farmland, if you will? We're talking about, not necessarily just startups, but companies that are approaching or have gotten their Series A, maybe. I mean, where's the sweet spot in there where you think you can drive the most value impact to an organization and an idea?
Well, I think it's just that. I think it's, I don't want people to leave with the impression that I come in with all this process and baggage. And no,
Right.
it's really, you know, how do we as a team take this brilliant idea and turn it into a business? That's what VCs want. That's what they want. That's why you'll see on my LinkedIn profile, I've worked with accelerators and studios and so forth.
Right.
And these young kids are brilliant. They're in college. They're, maybe 22, 23 years old, have fantastic ideas, but just haven't done it before. And my approach with these guys is more, look, take it or leave it, right? Especially when you're helping an accelerator at a university like Santa Clara. It's free. So you can take it for what it's worth. And I think when you approach them that way and say, this is how I've done it in the past, what do you think? And maybe you need to do this. And they ask questions like, gosh, what do I do on the legal side? What do I do from a banking perspective? I mean, they're starting, right? So
Right.
that's where I can help is, I've walked this path several times. I've gotten startups to successful exits. I've raised a bunch of capital, and I think I can help, right? So you take that approach. I think it's really a right approach, and I think a lot of people are looking for that. I think also on the PE side and the VC side, where I can help is analyzing investments and looking at companies, helping companies from an operational perspective, and a lot of the private equity guys are looking for that type of help, right?
Yeah, and it's funny because when you look across industries, I came up recruiting in an industry where if you didn't have that industry experience, a lot of times they didn't want to talk to you. It's the old meme that floats around LinkedIn every now and then that, hey, we want somebody with at least 7 years in a certain programming language, certain coding language. And they look at a resume and, well, we like everything about this candidate except they've only got 5 years in this language. And you come to find out it's the guy who developed the language and it's only been around 5 years. So you couldn't get 7 years. It's like you set these impossible standards. And I like the fact that where you come from, part of it is taking what may look insurmountable or impossible and putting a process around it to make it possible, to make, it digestible for an organization. Because how do you scale? I mean, I really don't care if you go out and you're B2B or you're B2C, how you get your customers. At the end of the day, customers like to feel that they're taken on board one at a time. And
Yep.
that there's a connection and that there's value. And so I like the way you're approaching it philosophically, that it's going to vary from company to company because we all present different values to our clients, to our customers.
Yep, and I do think building the right culture in the business is key to the team as well. And not all our startups are going to make it, right? And the majority of mine have made it, but some haven't. But if you're whether it's a failure or success, I'm always learning, right? I'm always learning, like, why didn't that work, or it seemed like a great idea. Was the business model wrong? Those
Right.
kind of things. You're always learning, and so it's kind of like I'm just a big sponge, and I've absorbed a lot of different experiences where I can share those. But the key is sharing the experiences that are pertinent to that business, right? Not
Right.
coming in and saying, oh, in the past, this is how it worked. I just don't do things that way. It's more, I might have seen this before, or wow, I've never seen this before. Right? I mean, it's you got to be able to adapt and build, and that's the difference in successful versus not successful startups, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Jim, if someone wants to get in touch with you, ask questions, socialize some ideas, have a sounding board, or maybe even ask for your help, what's the best way for them to find you?
Yeah, well, basically on LinkedIn, I know Jim Vogt is a pretty common name, but basically I'm here in the Bay Area. I'm listed in the Bay Area. You'll find me.
Hmm.
You'll find the same companies that I've been talking about in my past, like Trapeze and Synoptics and Bay. They're all in my profile. So probably the best way to find me is there. Um, I will update my contacts so that I have my personal email and my phone in the contacts on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah, no, that's prudent. And for anybody who listens to this who's connected with me on LinkedIn, and I've got 16, 20,000, I don't keep track anymore. Jim and I are connected, and I've known him long enough to know that he's just not spouting off. He's speaking reality. And I think, frankly, if you are a business owner, a business starter, you're a joiner, you're a potential investor, be that friends and family or VC, I think Jim's a heck of a resource. If you want somebody who can look at something holistically, bring a different view, and has been around enough to know, have a good sense of what's real and what's not real, what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, and understands what good looks like, hard pressed to find somebody else who could offer their perspective and be aligned. And Jim, I really appreciate you being on with me today. You and I have worked together in the past some, so we kind of know what makes the clocks tick, so to speak, and can't endorse what you do strongly enough, man. I really appreciate your time and your insight.
Yeah, and I'll leave you with one note here. We hear so much blab about AI, right? And big
Hmm.
news a couple of days ago. Um, the reality of AI is it is reshaping some markets, right? And where I'm actually
Right.
headed back in and advising a company right now is on the cybersecurity side, and people are now using AI to penetrate networks and infrastructure.
Hmm.
So what's going to get interesting in the next couple of years is you have to fight fire with fire. So you're going to find a lot more. I like to not just talk to AI, I like to talk to machine learning and data and how you actually train systems, right?
Hmm.
But essentially, you're going to have to be able to thwart the artificial intelligence attacks with artificial intelligence and build intelligent databases and things like that. So I think you would ask me before where I see the market going. I think there's all kinds of challenges with this new technology, including security threats, and so it's going to be interesting to see how that evolves. And I'm helping a company who's right in the middle of it, and I think it's going to be really interesting to see because security is a living organism, right? It's not a
Yeah.
static thing. So being able to adapt security over time, like we've done multiple times in the past, couple of decades, is going to continue to be a challenge with these new
Yeah.
technologies. So
No,
I'll leave you
absolutely.
with that. I'll leave you with that point. But that's where I'm kind of centered right now and helping, and it's really an interesting space.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jim. And that last part I think is exciting and terrifying at the same time. So we're going to have white hat AI agents and black hat AI agents, and maybe we'll come up with some different colored hats to go in there. I don't know, but
Uh, yeah.
oh, mercy.
Well, that's
We'll
what
find
keeps it fun. That's what keeps it fun, right?
and terrifying. Hey, Jim,
Yeah.
thanks so much, man. We'll talk again soon.
Thank you, John. Thanks for having me.